All right. Hello, everybody. This is Adam Gordon, and
Fred Cohen, and are you sure it's all right?
I'm sure it's all right.
Because it might be okay.
It might be okay, but I'm sure it's all right. And, still one of my favorite phrases of yours is, I am not afraid. I like that.
When you say phrases of mine, you do understand that, all this is from, rock and roll, right?
Of course. We are steeped in it. It's our history.
Wow, it's culture, man.
Yeah, it is.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So you had a subject that we had discussed last week, which of course I never remember.
And I only remember because I just played the tape of last week. So yes, but you were talking about how in cybersecurity, you got to allow for the outliers in the data because those in fact become much more valuable, and everything else you still have to pay attention to, because in that arena, the things that aren't Six Sigma events or black swans, as they are sometimes called, you can build huge momentum there. And I said, oh, that's a branding story. And that's where we cut off. So that's where we're going to pick it up this week, is why that sounds like a branding story to me.
So before we do that,
Yeah.
So I was on the plane back from Canada Sunday night, sitting next to a woman who does sales for a very substantial company that does anomaly detection. And she's now 30 days into starting to work as a salesperson there. Mm-hmm. And she was telling me about their company, and I was asking questions, and I was explaining, the limitations of the technology, and talking back and forth for a little while, and then I started to stop talking. And so, but what she did at that point was something highly unusual. She took out the book from the company where she was on her way to sales training and started reviewing stuff because she wanted to do a better job of being able to answer my questions. And she did a really fabulous job for somebody working there for 30 days to have the understanding she had. And these are complex issues, right?
Yeah. So
I said, okay, this is great. So let's email each other. So I got her email address, her card. She gave me, I gave her my card, and so we started emailing back and forth. And I pointed her to all.net, which is one of my websites, all.net. I've learned that you need to advertise clearly, right? And it's a branding issue. But so she responds back. And I noticed in her response that the email she got did not say all.net. It had this complex URL pointing off to some who knows what, right?
Okay.
And I asked her about it, and she said, well, I've never seen that before. Now, she's from an anomaly detection company. Okay. And here's something she's never seen before. Apparently, the anomaly detection mechanism, didn't notice it. Or maybe the anomaly detection mechanism put it there.
Maybe.
One way or the other, it altered the communication.
Yes.
Now, just again, so I'm working with you on these branding issues all the time, and it just popped into my mind, Tortious interference, right? Because all.net is a brand. It's my brand.
Right.
My brand. And when you replace that with something else, and then you put it in, when you click on that link, it takes you to some, this could be bad, and all this looking it up, checking it up. That's really potentially damaging.
Yes, very much so.
So here we have the anomaly detection company that's either not detecting the anomaly or altering the communication as part of the detecting of the anomaly.
Right.
And so somehow there's a problem here. Just thought I'd mention it. All right, so
and actually that points to something else that you and I both agree on, and I think that it would be a great thing to do if every CEO were forced to use their product for a month at a time.
No, all the time.
All of the time.
Exclusively. They don't get to use any competitive product. Yep. All right. So we were talking about branding and the rare event.
Branding and the rare event. And see, what you were talking about just now, what is exactly a kind of branding issue.
And the rare event issue. Yeah.
And the rare event issue, all in one. So So when you look at, for instance, a market that you are trying to address, and you put together a marketing plan, um, one thing that I find all of the time is that, first of all, there's no allowance for something like those rare events. There's no allowance for chaos, and that makes the plans a little bit fragile.
Yeah. By the way, those rare events aren't that rare. Rare.
And even if they are, they're still really important. A comet hitting the Earth is still a comet hitting the Earth, even if it only happens once in a billion years. If you happen to be there when it happens.
Whoa, wait, it's not once in a billion. I thought it's once in 100,000.
Okay, however many zeros there are.
The point is, it's coming soon to a neighborhood near you. Depends on the size. No, but it just occurred to me while we were talking here, right? That, what my response to her was upon that, she didn't quite get it as something important. But I told her, how about if you give me an email address, that's not your company email address, so I don't have to do this. I'm unwilling to continue communicating with people in a venue where my communications are being altered en route.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's enough to walk away from a company.
Yep.
And I'll do that every time. I've done it before when people alter stuff, or anything like that is just it's deceptive in a negative way. It's not a benefit, that deception. It's altering my communication with somebody, with you, with whoever. And I'm intolerant of the intentional alteration of my communications. That's not acceptable.
And I'm sure if the CEO of that company knew that was happening, he would be very unhappy about it. At least I hope.
Well, the question is, how many customers are you losing? Not that company, because I don't care about them. They're not my client, right? The question is, how many customers are you losing without knowing it because of this kind of foolishness? And by the way, a lot of people get this sort of interference in the internet today, and they have no idea it's happening.
Right. And a lot of people don't care.
Yeah, I've had people tell me your site's being blocked as this, or your email's getting blocked. I couldn't get my email through. And I look it up, and my system's working just fine. I haven't done anything wrong. Somewhere has some, filter that's turning my email address into a whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't even find out about it very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's a branding issue. Basically, somebody is claiming that you're no good.
Right. Exactly. And so my point here is that when you build a brand, you have to think about these long-term issues. You have to think about, while you're building your big umbrella brand and you're thinking about the big concepts, you have to remember that umbrella is built of a lot of individual little experiences, like Fred is just talking about. And if masses of those are not good, for instance, if you get a lot of customer service complaints, or if there's a lot of complaints about a manual or how hard it is to operate a web app or whatever it is, that becomes a real branding problem, because then you get associated with that problem. And each of those little losses in that case also can add up. So it can go in either direction. And the win that you get is, for instance, and we may have talked about this briefly a few weeks ago, I have a client right now who's going to a conference in Spain. And the conference in Spain is pretty well advertised, but she's being endorsed to go, or encouraged to go, by her network, because that network has already bought into the conference. And so that conference has done a really good job of branding, in that there is this momentum in the network of people they want to attract.
Yeah, she has to go because they want her to go. Her customers want her to go. So
customers and her peers want her to go. Exactly.
So now let's talk just for a moment about how sensitive this stuff is, right? Because one of the things about building a brand, so it's like reputation in general, right?
Yep.
You can spend a lifetime building up a reputation and have it, ripped away, pretty darn quickly, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you see this in the media, what's his name? The child rapist, and
Epstein.
What?
Jeff? Oh no, sorry, not Jeffrey Epstein. The other guy.
Yeah, whatever the guy's, I don't want to remember his name.
Okay.
Which tells you something, right? Here's a guy that was, rich and famous. Everybody knew him and liked him and blah, 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 blah. And it turns out he's selling children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've just mischaracterized it, I'm sure, but that's the point. It doesn't matter. He's now committed suicide, but which is an implication, maybe helps you understand how important brand is.
Oh, this is going a very unexpected place.
Well, but so the question is, how brittle is it, right? So somebody blocks all.net,
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? I suspect it has no net effect because my response to it, right? My response to it is I'm going to write an article, which I'm going to post on all.net and send out to LinkedIn and Facebook and wherever else. And people are going to find out that this happened to me, just like it could happen to them. And that I looked into it, and this is what was really responsible. And I'm going to point the finger at the people who did the wrong thing and identify that that's a problem that they should be paying attention to for themselves. And so that ends up, it's a judo, or a reputational judo.
Mm-hmm.
You turn their negative into your positive.
Right.
And in the influence operation space, this sort of stuff happens all the time. And so if you look at all the, obviously we're now in the impeachment insanity. If you look at the politicians talking about things, they're all trying to do political, influence jujitsu, right? To try to get, whatever negative it is with whichever side turned into a positive or a negative to the other side or whatever. And so my question to you is, how fragile is branding, and how do you do branding so that it's not that fragile?
Really good question. And, of course, part of the answer, because the answer is really complex, is it depends, because some of the answer is based on context. And one of the things that helps a lot in dealing with stuff like this is to have that long-term reputation built up before you need it. Something that I have learned, unfortunately, recently is that the right time to learn to use the tool is not when you need it. It's before you need it, so you know how to use it when you need it. Unfortunately, I learned that driving down Highway 1 at 80 miles an hour the other day, but everything came out okay. So
all right, I don't want to know about anything illegal, at least not in a public forum where you're asking it. But
even speeding.
But having said that, one of the things that occurred to me at some point in my life is that on any road I want to travel on, one of my goals is to have my car operate at the speed equal to the route number. Now, on 405 down in Los Angeles, my car wouldn't go that fast.
No.
But I tried. Just saying. Around here, it's not that bad. You get 84 and 60, whatever, routes like that. I mean, there may be curvy mountain roads, but you can still go 84 for a stretch. But so now there's this notion in influence operations of this overarching scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And when you create that overarching scenario and you sort of put the right influences into it, it makes it so almost no matter what happens, the people that are listening to it can't break free, right? And you think about it as religions, and I know talking about religions is going to get me in trouble. That's right. So most religions are designed so that it's a repeating meme, right? It's a reproducing meme. So
right.
The religion says teach your children, make sure, so now that causes the meme to reproduce when you teach your children and they teach their children and their children forever, and go forth and multiply, whatever, which is not a hard lesson to teach. Just say. So that's the reproductive part, but there's also the part where you basically tell them things like, other people are worshiping false gods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you know it's a false god? Because, well, it's not yours. Right? and then the other one is, is there actually a God, right? And And the concept there is the same, that if you're going to build a religion, you want to build a religion so that that's an unanswerable question. It's based on a leap of faith.
Right.
And so that there is no rational challenge. It doesn't matter what they say. You just say, well, just because you don't believe in it doesn't mean it's not true. You can't prove it scientifically, right?
Right.
Because science is not, the realm of religion, and vice versa. So creating these sets of circumstances that make it so that there is no refutation possible is very similar to the branding exercise of creating a brand so that it sort of self-defends, or at least it's in advance knows how it's going to defend against various things.
Yes, exactly. And that's where, and we talk to this about clients a lot, building an initial narrative becomes so important because it gives you something to defend as opposed to just trying to be reactive all of the time. So you have a long-term glue that is a framework for all of your stories, and they all fit into this narrative. And then when something happens, you have something to defend as opposed to just wondering what to do or not knowing what's the best direction.
So when you talk about building that narrative,
yeah,
most businesses, when they're starting up, they make changes and so forth. And we're going to the Investor Capital Expo tomorrow. There's going to be 16 companies, or so presenting there. And I'd be willing to bet that 15 of those 16 have changed their story more than once.
I bet.
And because pivoting is a natural part of as you advance your company, you learn more about it, you have different opportunities in the market and so forth.
Sure.
So somehow, if you're going to be effective at branding, unless you're going to keep rebranding, then that story that you tell up front is going to have to be generic enough so that it lasts.
Well, generic is certainly one strategy that you can use to make a long-lasting narrative. I prefer authenticity because, especially for young companies, if there's 5 or 10 people in the company, you basically you have 11 characters at least. You've got each individual and the group as a whole, and the brand ideally should be authentic to that group and what they are trying to do. And if that's true and that remains the same, then whatever pivot they might make, they still have the same foundation that they can build their next narrative on. So in that, it becomes a very strong way for young companies to be able to have something that is recognizable even over several pivots if they have to do that. And for mature companies to then build a bigger moat so they have a better place to defend. So
that's a really interesting, and in particular, because I'm going to put it in the context of sort of the standard stuff we do when we look at companies, right? And the first question that we ask is, what's your elevator speech, right? Which is another way of saying, so what the heck is this about?
Right.
And so when we do that, there are specific, questions that we ask that are related to that. And I was just going to pull up one of our tools here. It'll take me a minute to pull up the right thing.
Okay. And usually the initial question is some version of what's your story. It might be who sells what to whom. I know that's a question you like to ask. And the essence of that is what's your story? People want to know.
There are particular words that are used for this, right?
Yes.
So you sort of very often you talk about the elevator. Here. So let me just see if I can bring it up.
By the way, I met a guy with the best elevator speech I've ever seen a few weeks ago at a Keiretsu event, as a matter of fact.
Oh, well, tell me about it.
His elevator speech is, I make elevators.
Oh, I know that guy. I met him. But it doesn't seem to me like he's making any actual elevators yet, because I did have the conversation with him.
Yes, he is. He's still working on getting some of the patents, I think. I think that's where he is. But I thought it was a great elevator pitch.
All right, that's good to know. Let's see. God, I'm getting the wrong thing on my computer. That's not a good sign.
That's not a good sign.
Now I'm going to go over to one of our existing clients and hopefully, from their site do the right thing, but I don't want to show their particular information. Here it is. So there's this idea of strategy and tactics, right? But the strategy and tactics come after the vision, right? So the first thing that pops up, I'm just going to take over the screen here. And got to get to the right thing. There we go. So we talk about, we have the tagline. In this case, it's iBoosh, so I apologize to iBoosh if it's a little bit too early. But there's the tagline, the description, the long paragraph, a problem and solution. But then there's the vision. This is when you're talking about branding, you're really talking about vision as opposed to mission and strategy and core values, right?
Yeah, I'm not particularly a big fan of vision and mission statements, but yes, is the short answer to your question. Yes, that it essentially takes the place of those. What's the core story that's driving you forward?
So normally, the vision is, here's the future of the world that we see.
Right.
Right. And so now brand is not the vision of the world that we see, but somehow it has to relate to that. Right.
Yes.
And then there's the mission, which is, how you're going to, what the current path to achieving that vision is. So somewhere between vision and mission, not strategy and core values, should probably be involved in branding, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, and now you talk about brand. So when you look at a brand, this is sort of one of the problems here. These big generic brands like, Xerox. God, I had no idea they had the little ball thing and said Xerox.
Oh yeah, they changed that a few years ago.
But you see, that's a brand, right?
Yep.
And to me, at least those big brands don't do it. They're not giving me a story. I have no idea what that brand should be saying to me, right?
And and you're right. You're absolutely right. And that is really a shame, especially for Xerox, which could tell such an amazing story, but they kind of lost their way, as a lot of big companies do. IBM did it too for a while. They're coming back, but it's a big company and there's lots of pieces of it, and it's hard to create a consistent narrative because they think all of the pieces have to be equally weighted, and they're just not. I mean, there's a certain direction you're headed, and there'll be things that you're interested in as a company and you want to do those, and there'll be things that support the brand a little bit more directly. And IBM hasn't quite figured that out yet, I think.
Yeah. Now Apple, in the meanwhile, here's a company, when their brand started out, it was a computer company, but Apple was about regular people, and it was about beauty, and about, it was a picture eating an apple is a healthy thing, right? So it's consumer facing, and that's managed to last, and that's not a bad brand, although I don't like it in this color. That's a difference.
Well, as one of the most valuable brands in the world, yes, we could say it's not a bad brand.
Well, no, but now look at Zoom, which we're using right now. It's a good piece of branding. Zoom is about that video thing, right?
Yep.
Assuming you don't think that's an old style speaker, right? But so Zoom seems to do that pretty well. What's another one of those communications programs that's not Zoom?
WhatsApp?
No, but a video conferencing.
Oh, 8x8.
Really?
Yeah. They started out, actually,
okay,
they were
8x8. There's no, that doesn't say voice over IP.
Nope.
All right. What's another one?
Let's see. Another communications type company, Virtual PBX.
No. Another video desktop sharing, like Zoom.
Oh, what's it called? It's not Meetup. That's the groups.
Okay, so something
WebEx.
to note,
WebEx.
WebEx. So, just to note, Zoom, we remember right off, right? WebEx, what does that brand tell you,
Yeah.
right?
Not a lot.
So they got bought by Cisco. So now what's another one? What's the IBM one that they got bought? That they bought? Oh, how about GoToMeeting?
GoToMeeting.
GoToMeeting, and that's a good one.
That's the one I was trying to remember.
Yeah, and their logo is this, I don't know, this flowery like thing, right?
The asterisk thing, yeah.
Is that what that is?
I think so. I think the idea is there's a lot of people surrounding a central place, and they're supposed to be that central place. At least if I'm designing
I think it has a lot of interesting imagery. The old days when you had a movie and it was in a can.
Yeah.
Doesn't this sort of look like the film can? The film in the can, it had those circles and you turn it around.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It looks kind of like a film reel. Yes, it does. I used to be the projectionist for one of my college classes, so I dealt a lot with those.
Yeah. And
the other point to make about GoToMeeting is whether or not you like the logo or the brand or the look or anything like that, one of the things you got to say about them is they stuck with this. You see this thing now, and it's GoToMeeting. And so they have created that attachment really well.
Well, Zoom is pretty darn good at this.
Absolutely.
And they're newer, but they're all right. So that's an example, just comparing the brands inside that. But so there's that imagery. Now, if Zoom went to something other than that, remote meetings and so, then that might fall by the wayside.
Yes.
But it looks like they're not rushing away from it, right?
Right. And so here's a good example I can give you. This is a company that has been a client of ours for a long time. Go to flagshipfacilitiesinc.com.
Flagship facilities. I'm just going to go that way.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
if they're not coming up high, I'm going to go beat them. So these guys are interesting in that they have a bunch of different services that they use. And when we built this, we built it specifically for that, so that the logo, Flagship Facility Services, the facility services can be replaced by a number of different elements. And that allowed them to have different divisions for airports and different divisions for tenant improvement and things like that. And yet it all still played under the Flagship brand. And so what we're trying to do, especially these days, is help companies do that also with their story, so that it all happens within the context. Everything that you do happens within the context of your story, so that your marketing works better because it all's part of a single system, and your message gets across better.
So now when you talk about Flagship, right, that's the name is their, and all.net, same thing, right? The name is the logo, right?
Right.
Fearless security, fearless is the logo, right?
Yep.
So this is, in my mind, this rudimentary version, because obviously if I use it, it must be
And the nice thing about using a word as the logo is it makes it easy. We are possibly about to launch a new division of Oya called This, and that's what it's going to be called, This. And that's what the logo is going to be, This. And here we are, Oya Security Growth.
I understand, but so we're talking not about logos, we're talking about brand.
Right.
So logos are a part of branding. They're an association to the brand, but they're not the brand.
Right.
Right. So as sort of as a fundamental, we're looking at logos, but the brand for IBM
is much more than the blue IBM. The logo
is certainly recognizable, right?
Right. But it's much more than the blue IBM stripey thing there. IBM creates a certain expectation, a certain history, a certain narrative. They create a certain context. If something's from IBM,
Well, I
No, it
don't
has
think
a
anybody's
certain.
going to think of IBM and disassociate it with computers.
That's always going to be hard.
They're going to say IBM. No, that's got nothing to do with computers. No, no. So International Business Machines now no longer that name, just IBM.
Right.
But the logo is so embedded that they've used that logo, but it's always with these stripes through it, like it's a line printer, right?
Oh, I always thought of it as the striped suits that they used to wear.
Oh well, I don't think pinstripe was their thing. I thought it was black suits, black tie, white shirt.
I thought of them as pinstripe guys, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, but so all right, one way or the other, those associations you make, and let's just go to one more. Since we both live in Pebble Beach, we'll go to the pebblebeach.com. By the way, those pictures are a dead giveaway, right? I mean,
They are.
Right. So this is what we're talking about, right? Their brand up here is this famous tree,
Mm-hmm.
right?
From the logo. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I don't think you'll see people talking about Pebble Beach without the ocean and a golf course, right?
I think you're right.
Because there will be the association between, beautiful golf outside vacation at the airport, the tree, the ocean, obviously wine and golf, but that is, that's the brand, man, and it's not going anywhere.
Oh no. And if they tried to make it go anywhere, they would be mistaken, because those are the main features of the product.
It's not going anyway.
No.
It's a
And
100th anniversary.
And they have a very simple narrative. They don't have to do a lot of work to it. But for technology companies or biotech companies or things like that, where they're in a more dynamic environment, they have to be ready to switch stories or to amend their story when they need to.
So I don't think so. I think a good biotech company, their brand would be, turning ugliness and death into beauty and life. Right?
Yes, that might be their narrative. And if something happened with one of their tools that they're trying to have, make that happen, they would have to respond to that, and they would need a way to do that. So
but see, it's not a hard conceptual response. The technical details of it, of course, are very important, right? But the overarching response to it is, something along the lines of, it's not so much a nobody's perfect. It's about sometimes when you're trying to save somebody's life, it doesn't happen, right?
Yes, and
doctors, you can't save every patient, right?
And if the narrative prior to that was they were a hard-charging, money-driven organization, that would be a much harder thing to defend than if they were out there preaching the gospel about saving lives. So that's how brands create a context in which your narrative then can either thrive or get squashed, depending on what happens.
Right. So, again, but our narrative, the logo isn't so much the narrative, although obviously security growth, right? But
right.
Our hackers are heroes. We help grow cybersecurity companies. It's still in its infancy, but the brand is still that, right? The brand is, we're helping grow companies. We're helping grow cybersecurity companies. We could not rotate that into, we're a fishery, right? That wouldn't cut it, right?
Well, unless we bought a fishery, but yeah, we would have to do that.
Well, then it wouldn't be only a security growth.
We would probably
create another company with a different brand, right? So, there's another thing, and I know we're taking lots too much time here, but there's a big difference. Maybe we should discuss this next time. There's a big difference between small companies building brand and building logos.
Yes.
Unlike you, who said that if you're a small company, you wouldn't worry so much about the brand, you'd just create a good logo.
Yes.
I actually believe that understanding your brand, understanding the values that you bring to your customers is sort of central, and that focusing on that as a strategic issue, is really underlying what you're doing. And I think if you look at every company we deal with, at the end of the day, maybe there's not, hundreds of thousands of dollars going into branding of things, but understanding your brand and making your presentation so that it reflects that, to me, that seems to make lots of sense, right?
Yes. Yeah. And basically it's a pretty simple recipe. You want the narrative that you've got right now to have in it what you need to do next, to have in it what you need to do after that, and to have in it what you need to do a year, 5 years, pick a number down the line. And all of those should go into the thinking about everything you do, from the early narrative to campaigns that you do as a big company.
Right. We help grow companies. That's what Angel to Exit is, right? It turns out, it's not the logo, right? It's not the name, but it really is the brand, right?
Yeah.
And Angel to Exit, once you understand that in context, makes sense, right?
Yeah. And that's how you have built that brand. That's what you decided it was going to be. And we could make it the logo, but you've decided to make it "We Help Grow Companies," and an entirely valid choice. And
that took several years.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Right. To turn into that.
Yeah.
But now that's solid. I mean, that's what we do. We help grow companies, and it makes sense, right? It's always, and people misinterpret it, right? Oh, you're an angel investment group. Well, no, we're not really an investment group. We help grow companies. And so obviously I could work on the imaging and all this other stuff more and more. And as we, age and what's the right word for it? Become more sophisticated, mature. As we mature, it'll
change. Wisdom, I like to think, but that's me.
No, but the fundamental of what we do, we help grow companies, is right. And just to talk briefly about how this is transforming, right now, we're just starting contracts with a large enterprise in the innovation space. Right? So we're helping them build innovation programs and devise the metrics and the approach and so forth. And despite the fact that it's completely different from this whole startup thing, it's still, we help grow companies. In this case, we're helping to grow, a large enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a while to focus and find that out. Mm-hmm. But now that I actually know that, it makes perfect sense.
It does. Absolutely.
So that's the other thing, right?
And now what that's done is it creates kind of a little mini narrative for you. You're all about helping grow companies. And so that applies to everything. It's a very authentic Fred piece of work. And so therefore it will always work for you because you'll always be Fred.
And we're leveraging that same thing here, right? So we help grow cybersecurity companies, right?
Exactly.
So that, and OIA security growth, works with, Angel to Exit. It's the same underlying technologies we're using to get a handle on it, except it's also working with my cybersecurity companies and the methodologies they've developed over years.
Exactly.
So that there's a rebranding having to do with this, but underlying it, it's still, we help grow companies, right?
Yeah. And, because it's still you, and now it's me too. So,
and Dave.
This is authentic to the two of us. So this will continue to work for a while.
And Dave.
And Dave. And now Dave. That's right. So we have a new partner. So next week, the website will be different.
So now we're three.
Now we're three.
All we have to do is get to 4,853 and we'll just be completely different.
Okay. Well, folks, we're running late, so we're going to sign off. Thank you for attending the next podcast of OSG. I'm Adam Gordon. He's Fred Cohen. And we are OSG. We help grow cybersecurity companies.